Picture this: Beverly Hills, 1993. The lobby of the Four Seasons, packed. Producers in their Armani suits, Oscar winners sipping whiskey, and near the grand piano stood Clint Eastwood, alone with his stone face, arms crossed, eyes cold and unreadable. Across the room, a young rising actor holds court. He's loud, charming, and full of himself, laughing, name-dropping, spinning tales with one of them ending with a cheap imitation of a cowboy. The crowd laughs, everyone except Clint Eastwood. He says nothing, finishes his drink, and then nods at the bartender, walking out without a glance back. No confrontation, not even a little outburst, just silence. But the kind of silence that would end things. 4 years after, Hollywood whispered about that moment and wondered, what did Clint hear? What was said? Why did that actor's name suddenly vanish from the Warner Brothers casting lists? No one ever found out. Clint Eastwood never explained. He never ranted. He didn't go to the press. He never posted a word. He just erased people quietly, coldly, permanently. But now, at 95, the silence had started to crack, and in those rare moments, the legend's honesty and patterns began to reveal. Here are the names of the people that Clint Eastwood never forgave. These people either mocked him or challenged his principles. They didn't just clash with a filmmaker, but a man who lived by a code and never backed down. Michael Moore. First on that list, a documentary firebrand who tried to make his name by ridiculing Clint Eastwood's ideals. Wasn't funny to Clint. He didn't chuckle or clap back. He shut it down. Michael Francis Moore is one of America's most provocative and influential documentary filmmakers, known for his fearless commitment to exposing uncomfortable truths. Born April 23, 1954 in Flint, Michigan, Moore grew up in a working-class family, a background that shaped his lifelong empathy for ordinary Americans and his sharp critique of political and corporate power. After an early start in journalism with the Flint Voice, he transitioned into filmmaking with Roger and Me in 1989, a groundbreaking documentary that chronicled the economic devastation of his hometown following General Motors factory closures. The film's dark humor, emotional punch, and unapologetic activism redefined the possibilities of documentary storytelling. His later work and reputation. Moore's later works, including Bowling for Columbine in 2002, Fahrenheit 9/11 in 2004, and Sicko in 2007, cemented his reputation as a fearless social critic. His approach blended satire, empathy, and investigative journalism to question the systems that shape American life: gun culture, war policy, healthcare inequality, and corporate greed. Fahrenheit 9/11 became the highest-grossing documentary in history and won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, marking a rare triumph for a politically charged film. Beyond filmmaking, Moore has been a prolific author and activist, consistently using his platform to amplify progressive causes and challenge authority. His unfiltered voice and unapologetic style have earned him both admiration and controversy, but few can deny his influence on political discourse and modern documentary filmmaking. Throughout his career, Moore has remained steadfast in his belief that film can serve as a tool for accountability and change, giving voice to those often unheard. Whether praised or criticized, Michael Moore's impact endures, standing as a testament to the power of storytelling in shaping public consciousness. The feud. The whole thing began as a quip, or at least that's how Michael Moore treated it. At the 2005 National Board of Review Awards, Clint Eastwood stepped up to the microphone and, in that unmistakable gravelly drawl, said flatly, "Michael Moore and I actually have a lot in common. We both appreciate documentaries. But if he ever shows up at my front door with a camera, I'll kill him." Nervous laughter rippled through the room, followed by a few sharp intakes of breath. There's no wink, no grin, no sign of showmanship. The remark landed like a gauntlet hitting the floor. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was electric. Eastwood had spoken his truth, and he didn't need to say another word. Moore never crossed that line again. But the moment exposed something deeper than a passing joke. It revealed a philosophical canyon between two men who saw America through entirely different lenses. Riding the shockwave. At the time, Moore was riding the shockwaves of Fahrenheit 9/11, his blistering critique of the Bush administration, and the war that followed the September 11th attacks. His film had split audiences in half. Some hailed him as a truth-teller, others branded him a provocateur. But for Eastwood, who had built his post-acting legacy on restrained, morally complex storytelling, Moore's style felt like something else entirely. Where Moore saw righteous outrage, Eastwood saw spectacle. Where Moore saw the power of confrontation, Eastwood saw the erosion of dignity. By then, Eastwood wasn't just a movie star. He had evolved into one of Hollywood's elder statesmen, a filmmaker shaping his own brand of American reflection. $1 Million Baby had just earned him an Academy Award, and he was preparing Flags of Our Fathers, a somber meditation on war, memory, and sacrifice. His approach to storytelling was grounded in silence, respect, and restraint. Values he believed were vanishing from the national conversation. So when he heard Moore's name tossed around in the same breath as activism and expose, he didn't see courage, he saw opportunism. And for Clint Eastwood, there was no greater sin in cinema than exploiting human pain for applause. The mutual silence. Their paths never converged after that. No collaborations, no shared panels, no cordial nods across a crowded room. Just a cold, deliberate distance that began with one unforgettable line and calcified into mutual silence. If you ask Clint about it today, he'd likely raise an eyebrow, maybe let out a quiet grunt, and steer the conversation somewhere else. He doesn't waste words on old disputes. Eastwood doesn't do public feuds. He does quiet erasure. And in Hollywood, that silence carries weight. When Clint Eastwood stops talking about you, it's not because he forgot, it's because, in his mind, the story's already over. In the end, Eastwood's silence spoke louder than any feud could. It wasn't vengeance, it was principle. Hollywood moved on, as it always does, but that quiet standoff remained, etched in memory. Two artists, two Americas, forever divided by conviction, each certain the other had missed the point. Spike Lee. But Michael Moore wasn't the only filmmaker to test his patience. Spike Lee went even further, accusing Clint of whitewashing history on a global stage. Shelton Jackson, Spike Lee, stands as one of the most fearless and inventive voices in modern American cinema. A director, writer, and cultural commentator who has never shied away from confronting the nation's deepest wounds. Born March 20th, 1957 in Atlanta, Georgia, and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Lee's perspective was shaped by the vibrant culture and social turbulence of his environment. After earning a Master of Fine Arts from New York University's Tisch School of Arts, he burst onto the film scene with She's Gotta Have It in 1986, a witty, low-budget debut that marked him as a visionary storyteller capable of merging humor, style, and social consciousness. Throughout his career, Lee has used film not merely as entertainment, but as a mirror held up to American life. Works like Do the Right Thing in 1989, Malcolm X in 1992, 25th Hour in 2002, and Black Klansman in 2018 showcase his ability to weave race, politics, identity, and morality into deeply human stories. His influence beyond the screen. His films are known for their dynamic visual style, rhythmic editing, bold color palettes, and unmistakable energy, traits that have become his cinematic signature. Beyond aesthetics, Lee's work is defined by its moral urgency and fearless honesty. Lee's influence extends beyond the screen. As a professor at NYU, he's mentored a new generation of filmmakers, encouraging them to find their own voices. A frequent presence at film festivals and award stages, he continues to challenge conventions and provoke necessary conversations about justice, quality, and truth. Over 4 decades, Spike Lee has remained an unflinching chronicler of America's contradictions, filmmaker whose passion, intellect, and integrity have made him not just a director of films, but a director of thought itself. A battle over history itself. Clint Eastwood almost never fires back. His silence has long been his weapon of choice. But in 2008, he made an exception, and it wasn't subtle. When Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima hit theaters, critics called them a cinematic triumph. two sides of the same war told through opposite lenses. One captured the American soldiers' experience at Iwo Jima, the other revealed the human pain on the Japanese side. The dual release was bold, somber, and emotionally charged, showcasing Eastwood's belief that even enemies deserve dignity in storytelling. The films didn't glorify war, they stripped it bare, but not everyone saw the picture the same way. Spike Lee, then promoting his own World War II epic, Miracle at St. Anna, looked at Eastwood's portrayal and saw an absence too glaring to ignore. Not mentioning the Black Marines. He pointed out that Flags of Our Fathers made no mention of the Black Marines who fought and died at Iwo Jima. You can't just pretend they weren't there, Spike said. His words weren't an attack as much as they were a demand for recognition, for representation, for truth from another angle. Clint didn't take it that way. He didn't respond with diplomacy or measured phrasing. He shot back with something that sounded straight out of a Western. A guy like him should shut his face. The remark hit Hollywood like a gunshot. The next day, headlines blared, interviews flared, and Spike fired right back. I'm not gonna shut up. He sounds like an angry old man. For 4 tense days, the feud dominated every trade paper, every talk show, every film blog. Two icons, two visions of America, colliding in the open. One, the stoic cowboy traditionalist who built his legacy on silence and control. The other, the outspoken provocateur whose art thrived on confrontation and visibility. The clash of philosophies. This wasn't just an argument about war movies, it was a clash of philosophies. Who gets to tell America's story, and whose version of the truth deserves the spotlight? Many critics tried to decode Clint's remark, to smooth its edges, to explain it away as frustration taken out of context. But Eastwood never clarified, never apologized, never softened. His silence was his statement. To him, Flags of Our Fathers wasn't meant to represent every soldier. It was about one group of men, those who raised the flag and lived with the weight of that symbol. He wasn't interested in appeasing cultural expectations or revising history through political lenses. He believed in artistic truth, not consensus. Spike, on the other hand, saw film as responsibility. To him, history without inclusion wasn't truth, it was omission. He believed the filmmaker's job wasn't just to tell stories, but to correct the ones that had been left untold. Two visions, two Americas, neither willing to bend. They haven't spoken since. No panels, no award stage encounters, no polite words in print, just silence. Kind that feels permanent. And if you thought Clint's temper only flared with fellow directors, think again. Leonardo DiCaprio. His next confrontation happened much closer to home, right on his own set, with one of the most famous actors in the world, a man who tested Eastwood's patience and came up short. Leonardo DiCaprio, Method versus Gunslinger. Leonardo Wilhelm DiCaprio is one of the most versatile and enduring figures in modern cinema, a performer whose career has evolved from teen heartthrob to one of the most respected actors of his generation. Born November 11, 1974 in Los Angeles, California, DiCaprio began his acting journey at a young age, appearing in commercials and television series before his breakout role in What's Eating Gilbert Grape in 1993, which earned him his first Academy Award nomination. His raw emotional range and authenticity were evident early on, traits that would come to define his body of work. A cultural phenomenon. DiCaprio's ascent to international stardom came with Titanic in 1997, a cultural phenomenon that made him a household name. Yet instead of chasing celebrity, he pursued depth, collaborating with some of cinema's most visionary directors, including Martin Scorsese, Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, and Alejandro G. Inarritu. Films like The Aviator in 2004, Inception in 2010, The Wolf of Wall Street in 2013, and The Revenant in 2015 showcase his commitment to complex, psychologically driven characters who embody ambition, obsession, and survival. His influence beyond the screen. Beyond the screen, DiCaprio has become an influential environmental activist, founding the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation in 1998 to support global conservation efforts. His speeches at the United Nations and work on documentaries such as Before the Flood in 2016 highlight his dedication to combating climate change and protecting endangered ecosystems. Throughout his career, DiCaprio has balanced fame with focus, artistry with advocacy. His performances are marked not by vanity, but by transformation. Each role a study in discipline and depth. In an industry often defined by fleeting trends, Leonardo DiCaprio remains timeless, a cinematic craftsman whose pursuit of truth continues to captivate audiences across the world. Method acting versus old-school craftsmen. Two icons from two different schools of cinema. DiCaprio, the intense, meticulous method actor, chasing emotional depth in every take. Eastwood, the old-school craftsman who prized instinct, silence, and efficiency. When Clint cast Leo as J. Edgar Hoover in 2011, the industry was electric. Old Hollywood met new intensity. It was an artistic collision that promised brilliance and delivered tension. From the first day of shooting, their creative philosophies collided like thunderclouds over a calm plain. Eastwood's directing style was famously fast and fluid. He hated waste, time, words of emotion. One take, maybe two, and he'd call it. To Clint, acting was instinct, not overthinking. But for DiCaprio, whose method was rooted in emotional excavation, a single take was like barely scratching the surface. He lived in the pauses, the retakes, the endless probing for truth. Clint called it good enough. Leo called it unfinished. The chaos then after. What followed wasn't chaos, it was stillness, friction, and silence. The atmosphere on set shifted. Crew members felt it, though no one dared mention it aloud. Their exchanges were polite, professional, but there was a chill in the air. As one insider put it, it was like watching a racehorse try to run in cowboy boots. DiCaprio thrived on exploration. Eastwood thrived on momentum. Both men were masters of their craft, yet their methods could not have been further apart. DiCaprio tried to adapt. He trimmed his questions, tightened his preparation, and pushed to meet Eastwood's rhythm. But for Clint, the rhythm never changed. He shot like a man who trusted his gut more than any monitor. He valued spontaneity, the purity of a first reaction. For him, doing a take twice was a form of doubt, and Clint Eastwood didn't do doubt. Silence spoke volumes. The movie wrapped without incident, but the silence afterward said everything. There were no shared interviews, no quotes of mutual admiration, no whispered talk of a second collaboration. J. Edgar came and went, respected, discussed, but never fully embraced. And when Clint moved on to his next projects, his call sheet didn't include DiCaprio. Observers offered their theories. Some said it was creative friction, nothing more, a generational clash between instinct and analysis. Others believed Clint saw in Leo a reflection of everything he had left behind: the method, the intensity, the endless search for meaning. Clint had built a career on precision and restraint. Leo built his on immersion and risk. They were bound to clash. In the end, there were no villains, no heroes, just two men standing on opposite ends of the same art form, both driven by truth, but chasing it in different directions. Eastwood moved on, as he always did, with silence as his final word. And for DiCaprio, it was another lesson in the unspoken language of Hollywood, where respect doesn't always mean understanding, and collaboration doesn't always lead to kinship, only to a quiet acknowledgement that even shared brilliance can burn too bright to last. Seth Rogan. But if DiCaprio challenged Clint's control behind the camera, Seth Rogan went a step further. He mocked Clint's legacy in front of the entire world. And unlike Leo, he did it publicly. Seth Rogan, the sniper insult Clint. Some actors make quiet enemies. Seth Rogan made his loud. Seth Aaron Rogan is one of the rare figures in Hollywood who seamlessly bridges comedy, creativity, and candor. Born April 15, 1982 in Vancouver, Canada, Rogan began performing stand-up comedy as a teenager. His sharp humor and fearless delivery quickly earning him attention. His early collaboration with writer-director Judd Apatow proved pivotal, landing him a role on the short-lived yet influential TV series Freaks and Geeks. When Hollywood took notice of his easygoing wit and relatable screen presence, Rogan transitioned into films. making a splash with The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and later leading box office hits like Knocked Up, Superbad, and Pineapple Express. But Rogan is far more than a comedic actor. Over time, he evolved into a multifaceted storyteller, writing, producing, and directing films that merge absurdity with heart. His partnership with Evan Goldberg produced a distinctive comedic voice defined by friendship, chaos, and unexpected emotional depth. Movies like This Is the End and The Interview showcased his daring humor, often pushing cultural and political boundaries. Versatile actor. Yet, beyond the laughs, Rogan has shown remarkable dramatic range in films such as Steve Jobs and The Fabelmans, proving he can hold his own in more serious narratives without losing authenticity. Outside of acting, Rogan has become a powerful advocate for social causes, particularly through his work with Hilarity for Charity, an organization he co-founded to raise awareness and support for Alzheimer's care and research. His openness about mental health, cannabis use, and the realities of fame reflect a rare honesty that resonates with audiences. Over 2 decades into his career, Seth Rogan remains both a creative force and a cultural commentator, a man who can make the world laugh while quietly reminding it to think. American Sniper. In 2014, Clint Eastwood released American Sniper, the story of Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. The film divided critics but dominated the box office, becoming a cultural flashpoint. For millions, it was a patriotic tribute to sacrifice and service, a portrayal of one man's moral burden in war. But for Rogan, it was something else entirely. Just days after its release, he fired off a tweet, a casual, offhand joke that landed like a grenade and left Hollywood buzzing. American Sniper kind of reminds me of that movie playing in the third act of Inglourious Basterds. You know, the one where the Nazi sniper is killing Allied soldiers. A Nazi propaganda. Rogan didn't mention Clint Eastwood by name. He didn't have to. The implication was atomic. Comparing American Sniper to Nazi propaganda, it wasn't just a critique of a movie. To many, it felt like a swipe at everything Clint Eastwood represented: stoicism, patriotism, and cinematic worldview built on moral conviction. Rogan later claimed it was just a joke, but the damage was already done. The tweet went viral, spawning headlines, debates, and angry responses from fans and veterans alike. Eastwood, true to form, didn't take to Twitter, didn't issue statements, and didn't appear on talk shows to defend himself. Because Clint Eastwood doesn't do social media wars, he does silence. Cold, deliberate, unnerving silence. An insult cloaked in humor. Behind closed doors, though, those close to him said he was furious, not just because of the insult, but because of how it was done, in public, cloaked in humor, and broadcast to millions. To Clint, this wasn't wit, it was cowardice. Rogan's attempt at satire struck Clint as cheap, an easy shot taken from behind the safety of a keyboard, not face-to-face. And though Rogan would later clarify that he wasn't calling American Sniper Nazi propaganda, the apology never really landed. Not in Clint's inbox and certainly not in his heart. From that moment on, Rogan's name vanished from Clint's world. No direct acknowledgement, no mention in interviews, no subtle nods of reconciliations, just the sound of a door quietly closing. Creating boundaries. Studio insiders later claimed Eastwood made it clear to producers and casting teams, if Seth Rogan's name ever showed up on a project list, it should disappear just as quietly. Eastwood wasn't interested in grudges. He was interested in boundaries. And to him, that line had been crossed. Because if there's one thing Clint Eastwood doesn't forgive, it's disrespect, especially from someone who hides mockery behind a smile. And just like that, the gunslinger holstered his words once again, letting silence do what no tweet ever could: end the conversation. In the end, Clint Eastwood didn't need to respond. His silence spoke louder than any headline. For Rogan, it was a lesson in the quiet gravity of a legend who never argues, never forgets, and never forgives disrespect. Gene Hackman. But the final name on that unspoken list wasn't a comedian or a provocateur. He was a peer, an equal, a co-star. And their rift didn't explode in public. It simmered in silence for years, right under Hollywood's nose. Gene Hackman, The rival Clint Eastwood couldn't direct. On screen, they were electric. Off screen, they barely spoke. Eugene Allen Hackman, known to the world as Gene Hackman, stood among the most commanding and versatile actors in American cinema. Born on January 30th, 1930 in San Bernardino, California, Hackman's path to stardom was anything but smooth. After serving in the U.S. Marine Corps, he pursued acting with relentless determination, studying at the Pasadena Playhouse, where, ironically, he was once told he'd never make it in Hollywood. Yet Hackman's grit and raw authenticity proved everyone wrong. He rose to prominence in the late 1960s with Bonnie and Clyde, earning his first Academy Award nomination for his unforgettable performance as Buck Barrow. What followed was a career defined by intensity, precision, and emotional truth. Hackman could disappear into any role, whether playing morally complex heroes, ruthless villains, or ordinary men facing extraordinary circumstances. His portrayal of Popeye Doyle in The French Connection in 1971 cemented his place in film history, winning him his first Oscar for Best Actor. The film's realism and Hackman's explosive energy redefined the modern crime thriller. A string of powerful performances. Throughout the following decades, Hackman delivered a string of powerful performances in classics like The Conversation, Mississippi Burning, Hoosiers, Unforgiven, and The Royal Tenenbaums. He brought intelligence and humanity to every character, never relying on vanity or artifice. Off-screen, Hackman was famously private, preferring a quiet life away from Hollywood's chaos. In 2004, he retired from acting, choosing to focus on writing novels and living peacefully in New Mexico with his wife. Gene Hackman's legacy endures, not just in awards or box office numbers, but in the weight of his performances, always grounded, always true. He remains a symbol of cinematic integrity, a master craftsman whose every line, glance, and silence carried the authority of a man who understood life in all its flawed beauty. Unforgiven. In 1992, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman came together for Unforgiven, the film that redefined the Western and swept the Oscars. To the world, it looked like a seamless partnership between two titans, the steely-eyed cowboy filmmaker and the mercurial powerhouse actor. But behind those stoic performances, a quiet, stubborn tension was brewing. It wasn't about ego in the traditional sense, it was about method, control, and philosophy. Clint Eastwood was known for running a set like a well-tuned watch, calm, efficient, and rooted in mutual respect. He didn't raise his voice, didn't waste time, and never over-explained his vision. He expected the same quiet professionalism from everyone around him. Hackman, on the other hand, was a different kind of force, fiery, instinctual, and intensely committed. He believed great performances came from friction, from challenge. Eastwood valued order. Hackman thrived on chaos. It was a combustible mix. Spark between the two men. From the very first week of shooting Unforgiven, the tension was palpable. Crew members whispered about the sparks between the two men. Hackman questioned lines, camera angles, even tone. He wasn't trying to undermine Clint, he simply couldn't help himself. He'd spent decades perfecting his craft, and taking orders, even from another legend, didn't sit easily with him. One moment became legendary among the crew. During a key scene, Hackman stopped mid-line, frowned, and turned to Eastwood. "That line doesn't work. I'm not saying it." The set froze. Eastwood didn't flinch. He just looked at Hackman for a long, steady moment and said quietly, "You will." That was it. No shouting, no argument, but everyone understood what had just happened. Eastwood had drawn a line. From that moment on, the tension hovered over the production like heat on a desert horizon. The two men kept their distance, professional, courteous, but never friendly. They shared no jokes between takes, no handshakes at wrap. The respect was mutual, but the warmth was gone. Winners, yet strangers. When Unforgiven swept the Oscars, winning Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Editing, both men walked away as winners, yet as strangers. Eastwood praised the cast publicly, often mentioning Morgan Freeman and Richard Harris. Rarely, if ever, did he speak of Hackman. Those close to the production say Clint respected Gene's talent immensely, but found him impossible to direct. "Too much fire in too small a space," one crew member recalled. After Unforgiven, Hackman's career slowly wound down. He would retire a few years later, quietly, gracefully leaving behind one of the richest legacies in American film. Eastwood, meanwhile, continued his directorial journey, more selective than ever, always surrounding himself with actors he trusted completely. Because for Clint, chemistry wasn't about star power, it was about trust, rhythm, silence. Once that trust cracked, there was no going back. Two legends, one masterpiece, and a silence that never broke. Because when Clint Eastwood closes a door, it stays closed. The silence of the gunslinger. Clint Eastwood never needed to raise his voice to make a point. He didn't rant, gossip, or air his grudges in the press. He simply watched, remembered, and when someone crossed the line, he quietly erased them. In a town built on charm and compromise, Eastwood forged his legacy on conviction. Unshakable, unapologetic conviction. For 5 individuals, 5 names whispered through Hollywood's back channels, working with Clint Eastwood wasn't merely an opportunity. It was a test. Some passed with grace, others failed spectacularly. So here's the question only you can answer. Was Clint Eastwood right to keep his silence, or did some of those grudges go too far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. And if you crave more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more similar content. Thank you. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon